everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Hockeytown University. You're here with me once again, Zach, and with my lovely co-hosts, Matt and Derek. What's up, boys? How's it going?
It's going fantastic, Zach. I can't complain. And thank you for calling me lovely, by the way. I appreciate that. Yeah, we've had a rough stretch of hockey here, but it was a pretty good day today. We had the first race of the Formula One season, and I got to watch my favorite team, Red Bull, win a race. So it's nice that one of my sports teams is actually doing well. Like God knows the one we talk about on this podcast is just not putting it together. But we will cover that later. But pretty good Sunday for me. Can't complain.
How about you, Derek?
I feel that over here, Leslie. Nothing to complain about besides a horrific couple of games. That is for sure. Another team like you to root for, because right now it's just kind of sad. I guess got the Red Wings and it hurts. And the fact that I'm looking up at the score of the game currently, not either right now.
I feel for you, Derek. Yeah, for those of you tuning in right now, for us it is currently 7:26 p.m. on Sunday, March 5th. The Red Wings are currently playing the Philadelphia Flyers. It's second period with 4.5 left to go. They're down 2-1, but we're not here to talk about that. But touching on what Derek was saying, Red Wings are on a 5-game losing skid, so that does break our hearts a little bit. And since the last time we've spoken, the Red Wings have lost twice. They lost to the Seattle Kraken 5-4 in overtime. They also lost to the New York Islanders yesterday 4-1. Regarding the Seattle Kraken game, the goal scorers in that game were Ben Sherratt. It was presumably Sider, but I believe it bounced off of Adam Ernie. Berggren got a goal from a really good Zanita pass, and then Wallman ended up scoring a goal as well. That came in at perfect time right after his contract extension, might I add. But the Red Wings ended up sending in the OT. Sider forces a slashing penalty towards the middle of the OT 3-on-3, thus then allowing the Kraken to score 4-on-3 in overtime to seal the deal 5-4. Like I said, Red Wings also lost 4-1 to New York Islanders. The only goal scorer was Dylan Larkin. The Red Wings tried their best to hold on to keep the lead going into the third once Larkin scored in the second. But ultimately, when you got Hellberg in net and nothing against him, bad things are going to happen if you don't play tight defense and try to put up some more goals. And that's the Red Wings story as of late. They're not scoring as much as they were right before the Tampa Bay game. So that really sucks. This episode is primarily going to focus on everything that happened after the trade deadline. It's going to focus on our thoughts on the Yzerplan, where we think the team is at, where we would like to see the team head into the direction that we think could make them a playoff team / Stanley Cup contender, and then just our thoughts in general on how we think that everything is going and how we would grade this season and the last 4 years of Steve Yzerman being the general manager. But I want to ask you guys a couple questions. But before I do, are you guys almost in the same realm as I am when I say that Michael Rasmussen almost was the heart and soul of this team right before he got injured? Because we've had nothing but losses ever since then. So I want to hear you guys' take on that. Do you guys miss Michael Rasmussen as much as I do?
Oh, yeah, we all know, right now that he is one of the key players on the team, and the fact that after he went out, it was kind of a small downslope. It was freaking just a shot to the knee. Took him out, and now we're just sitting here on the sidelines watching the entire team just lose everybody else. It's at the trade deadline and all that great stuff like that. We're getting rid of people. Like Yzerman said, we're sellers right now. He had no intention of being a buyer anyways, even though tried calling that one out a while back that we might be, but no. After those Ottawa games, it turned around real quick for us, and we turned into really hardcore sellers after that. So it was really hard to just keep watching everybody disappear from the team, especially all these key components that we really needed, especially on the D.
That's crazy. I mean, it's like with Rasmussen, you don't know what you have until it's gone, right? I mean, he's got more impact on this team than just, what he does on the ice. So I think it's pretty fair to say with all these losses that he's kind of like a glue guy, and when he's out there on the ice. I think a lot of teams kind of recognize his size and they kind of recognize his physicality. So they play with a little bit more, I don't know if I want to say fear, but they're keeping one eye on the puck and one eye on him when he's on the ice, because you don't want that dude barreling towards you full speed with his crazy serial killer eyes. I mean, that's not going to end well for you. So I really do think there's an element of physicality that the team has lost with Michael Rasmussen. And not to mention, he can chip in some offense too when he really needs to. I mean, he's a very smart player on the net. So I don't really know if we could lay all the blame at one player's feet for these losses. It's definitely a team fundamental thing. But I gotta be honest, I'm missing Rasmussen right now.
Yeah, it sounds like majority of the fan bases as well. I mean, that was a player who took a really big step this year, and yeah, he is turning into a great middle six forward, and possibly with the potential, in my eyes, that he could potentially be, you know, and I should start off with saying this, is that when Ken Holland drafted him, you know, he pictured him as the next Thomas Holmstrom. Be in front of the net, be the big body, get the goals in the net. I'm not really expecting him to go out and do that, but I would like to see him potentially fill out as someone who could be our our Tom Wilson. That would be great. You know, I think having a big body on that top line with Larkin and Raymond could be great. Especially Raymond being more on the small end. You know, you could use Raymond and Larkin both as the shooters. They're both playmakers. Just make sure that Michael Rasmussen is the one who's defending those guys and getting in front of the net to make sure that he deflects some pucks going towards the net, you know, just messes with the goalie a little bit, give him some chirps, whatever you got to do. But yeah, I'm really missing Mike Rasmussen a lot. So, but I also want to ask you guys, in your minds, do you believe that it was right to make the move, moving the key players such as Philip Hronek and Tyler Bertuzzi, but also add in Jacob Verana and Oscar Sundqvist? Do you guys believe that it was right to move those guys on right after you just signed Larkin to his long-term extension? And I asked that question in regard to knowing that those were, other than Larkin, the longest tenured players on the roster. So what does that tell you to players coming in? You know, and how do you kind of justify that, you know, if you sign with us, that you're safe? And if you're someone who's, you know, just kind of outside of the window that we want them to be, you know, are they really meant for this team overall? And just tell me what you guys think about that. Does that seem like an issue to you guys, that it seems like key players that have been in this organization for a while are being pushed out via trade? Do you guys see an issue with that at all? Leslie?
With these two longest tenure players in Hronek and Bertuzzi, it's really different situations of why they got moved in the first place. I mean, I would love to still have Bert here. The reality is he was never going to sign a long-term contract. I mean, there was just no talks really since last year for a contract. So it's just the writing was on the wall basically with that one. And yeah, we definitely feel the loss from him. I mean, Larkin's press conference after signing his contract, that should be a happy press conference for him that he's staying in Detroit for 8 more years. And you have him breaking down up there because his buddy got traded. It really sucks to see, and it's like human side of the NHL. But at the end of the day, business is business. You got to move the guy for whatever you think is fair value for him, because it's no way you're not losing him for nothing in the summer if you decide to keep him. And with Hronek, I know that Yzerman said in his presser a couple days ago that it was never really a plan to trade him. It just got the right offer. And that really goes to show that pretty much every single player on this roster, you could argue like the top end talents, but pretty much every player on this roster has a price. When that price comes along and someone wants to pay that for your player, would be fool not to take it. But I think it's different situations. I think if Larkin was really a guy who never would have signed and he was traded, that'd be a really big issue, because he is right now the longest tenured player. I think it's just a matter of those players getting traded, whether or not they fit the timeline and they want to be here long term, I think is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I want to touch on something before you go ahead and answer my questions, Derek. He did mention about Tyler Bertuzzi that he had discussions early on in the season with his representative. That didn't go anywhere, and then talked briefly before the deadline, which didn't lead anywhere as well. So yeah, or Yzerman was then stuck into a position where he was like, do I want to risk carrying out the rest of this contract, or do I want to see something coming back that could help us out in the future? And he ultimately made that tough decision, and he's someone who says he likes being in these tough positions to do so. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that real quick from his press conference as well. But Derek, yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Shipping off some of these key players that have been along the ride with Dylan Larkin through the ups and downs of the organization. How do you feel about them being out of the system now?
I mean, it honestly makes a lot of sense with how the team's been doing. And like you say, the ups and downs of the team right now, it was basically all downturn what they were doing. Of course, like it's a nice rebuild time for the team. We're still, maybe in 4 years into a rebuild. But at the same time, it really shows that like anybody who's in a rebuild is not safe on the team. You're going to be traded off for better players, bring all new people in, especially the older team players on the team that have been there for a while. That means they have more to show, more to give to another team. You can get more for them. So, of course, you're probably going to have to sell off some of the higher-end assets that you have just to be able to, like, touch final base with somebody else and get some better players in. Same old people there the entire time, even though, of course, like you were saying, I didn't want to see Bertuzzi to get kicked off the team. Not kicked off the team, traded off the team, but at the same time, he was my favorite player. I complain about it nonstop. I was hoping that, it wasn't going to happen, but at the same time, like Yzerman said, like you said too right there, what he was talking about, they had a lot of talks and it was just going nowhere. So at that point, unless you're going to make a cup run, like he was stating, and obviously it doesn't look like we're going to be doing that at all this year. It's time to get some fresh people in here, get what you can for some people. I mean, I'm okay with what we got. Just want a little bit more, but first round's the first round. I can't complain too much about that. But yeah. Honestly, no one's safe right now. We have a lot of young people, and that's why they're all getting like short-end deals, except for Larkin, of course, who we got trapped there forever. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, we can finally stop talking about Larkin now that he signed that contract, eh? But I hate to hurt your feelings, Derek. I don't know if you knew this, but Tyler Bertuzzi did end up getting a point in his first game with the Boston Bruins last night. So that's kind of sad.
Why not?
And seeing him in that jersey, honestly, it's an ugly color on him. Black and yellow is not.
It a little on my mouth when I saw
it. It's not him, that's for sure. But good luck to him, like I said, before, and to all the rest of the players, Oscar Sundqvist, Jacob Verana, all those guys. Let's talk about the state of the team after all the trades, but let's also talk about something that Derek Lalonde, the first year head coach of the Detroit Red Wings, has mentioned quite a few times, whether if that was in like pre-game press conferences or post-game conferences. He's mentioned multiple times this season that this team truly does lack superstar elite talent. While this team was considered a playoff wildcard hunt team, it was tough to imagine how much further they could have gone had we kept all these players that we did trade. So, following along with what we said, this is all part of the Yzerplan, where this isn't new to us. We saw it with the Anthony Mantha trade. It was bound to happen, and it's not saying that it's good that it happened, but I'm glad that we were able to keep Dylan Larkin. This is someone that, he's going to be our next Steve Yzerman, and Steve Yzerman didn't win his first Stanley Cup until he was, 32, 33 years old. And so I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen with Larkin, but we need to build those pieces around them, and by shipping off, and I hate to say it like that, but by shipping off players like Tyler Bertuzzi and Filip Hronek, that will speed us up in the process to get there where we want to be. And I guess I want to ask you guys this question: are we now in an NHL era where if you don't get multiple picks that are in the top 3 to 5 range for multiple years, so teams like Arizona, not the greatest example, New Jersey, Rangers, Oilers, Toronto, you know, if you don't get those picks in multiple years, are you then destined for a rebuild that takes 7 to 10 years? Derek, what are your thoughts on that?
It really depends on the team, I would have to say, at that point. I mean, if you're any team like those lower end bottom three right now, even us comparatively, I would say you're going to be having a rough time for the next few years. So, yeah, probably actually push you out 7 to 10 years before you actually get anything good going on with the team that actually is worth playoff like material, which sucks in the long run because that's a long time and it's a hard thing to push through for your fans, especially. I mean, we're over here with the Red Wings. I've been to the playoffs in, 7 years? 8 years?
Feels like 20.
10 years?
Like
no, I don't even know anymore at this point. But nice to see us back in there, but yeah, it's a hard thing. Yeah, 7 to 10 years sounds about right in that situation.
What are your
I don't necessarily think that the formula is to get, every single year picks between 1 and 5. I mean, there's other ways to build your team to be a Stanley Cup contender. I mean, look at the Rangers, all their additions from free agency. That looks like a Stanley Cup roster right there. You think about teams like Vegas, who ever since they've been a team, I can't really name one player who was drafted that's actually taken a big role on that team. They always built through free agency and sell off future assets to win now. And getting picks 1 through 5, that's not always a winning formula. I mean, some number ones are busts. Lafreniere, I'm not saying he's a bust, but he hasn't really played to the level of talent a number 1 should be. El Yakupov was a number 1 overall. We all know how that went. Even pick 3, Jonathan Drouin was a 3rd overall. Alex Galchenyuk was a 3rd overall. Picks really don't mean so much. Sure, you can get a top 5 pick, and that's really nice, but you have to make sure that you're picking the right player and that you can draft and develop him. That's really all it comes down to. When you have some players in the NHL, there's some examples that hit home. Atsuk and Zetterberg were I think they were both 7th round picks. So sometimes you find some gems, and if there's some raw talent there and you know how to develop it, then you really have a hell of a player on your hands. Us Red Wings fans know that better than anyone, really. And also, Steve Yzerman is our GM. There's plenty of players on Tampa who have turned into fantastic NHL players who have been later round picks. So it's really all about just knowing exactly what you want to get at the drafts, really trusting your scouts to find the talent that can turn into an NHL player, or just have a shit ton of money and go out and get a free agent every year. I mean, there's way more strategies than just getting lucky every year in the draft and picking a player and developing him. How many first overalls have Edmonton had, and they haven't won a Stanley Cup since? So it's really just down to how well you do your job, and whatever strategy you want to take, you need to make sure that you can maximize on the strategy.
Yeah, in the Red Wings case, there's a lot of key components as to why it feels like that it's been taking forever. I mean, Derek, yeah, it's this will be the 7th year that we will be missing the playoffs, since 2017 was the first year that we missed. 2016 was the last year. And Leslie, like you said, there's a lot of things that go into it. You could get the multiple top 3 picks in a row, kind of like how Edmonton did, and it really just comes down to who you're selecting, how your organization handles these young prospects coming in, and how you can develop them. And that's something that the Red Wings have been doing ever since Steve Yzerman has come in. And I just want you guys to know that within those 7 seasons that we have not made the playoffs, what is it? Where did it go? Take a guess how many of those first round picks are no longer on the team.
I think I'd run out of fingers to count on if I had to.
Granted, was it 8 or
9? Not that many. Granted, one of them was in 2013, and then one other was in 2015 and 16, I believe. But yeah, in those years, so basically what I was trying to get at, Anthony Mantha, Evgeny Svechnikov, Dennis Cholowski, those are 3 huge misses that we had on first-round talent. And out of those ones, Larkin's the only one who's left standing. And then you look at players like Phil Zadina. Then you look at players like Joe Veleno, who are slowly taking their time. Then you look at Michael Rasmussen, same thing. Out of nowhere, nice, Derek.
I know, right? Great service here.
Yes, we like to stay refreshed here on the pod. We do. Thanks, Sarah.
Certainly do.
So, but yeah, that really does push the timeline back. So, like for the Red Wings, when it comes down to the 7 and 10 years, when you're like a team that has made a Stanley Cup run for 25 years in a row, yes, it will take 7 to 10 years, and it's unfortunate to say that. And a lot of things have to go right, and unfortunately, it just doesn't end up being that way, and it sucks to say that. But we have a lot of good prospects upcoming and developing, whether that's in the American Hockey League, the East Coast Hockey League, the Swedish Hockey League, whatever you want to call it, whatever you're looking at, whatever you're watching. We have a lot of good, not elite, but I would say borderline elite talent. We got some top talent for sure that are up and coming, so I'm very much excited about that. But yeah, my opinion on that is that, if you're not getting top 3 or top 5 picks, it is going to take longer. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you stick with the plan that you're trying to implement. And that's become a competitive team for the long term. So that way we can get back to the 25-year streak and eventually beat that. Maybe we can make it a 30-year streak. But a lot of things have to go right, like I said. But going on with that, this is a fun little question that I want to ask you guys. And Mickey Redmond and those guys were talking about it on yesterday's game. He says having guys like Jacob Chychrun, is bad for players affecting their pension and other stuff that falls in those categories. Now, how do you guys feel about sitting players to prevent them from getting injury for trade purposes for more than 2 weeks? If you guys were GMs, would you guys be sitting your star player for trade purposes for more than 2 weeks? Sorry.
I mean, shit, I'd sit him if there's a trade going to be happening tomorrow and I don't want him to get injured in that game. But the fact that you're sitting a guy for a stretch of whatever it was, 7 or 8 games, to me is just ludicrous.
It was pretty much a month.
Yeah, I mean, it really felt like a month. It was definitely a couple of weeks, that's for sure. But I think it's really just like a bad job on the GM's part, because if you really had this guy playing, like I get that you're worried that he's going to get injured, and that's totally fair. But you're not playing the guy. Who knows? That guy could go out there and score 7 hat tricks in a row. Like, I don't know. But there's a lot of missed opportunity there to showcase what this player has. And maybe they ask what you have for that player if he puts together a really good stretch of 7 or 8 games. Maybe it'll skyrocket. I mean, you never know. I think there's not really doing much good sitting a player for that long. Like I said, I don't think if I was a GM, I would do it longer than 1 game, and that's just if there was a trade happening literally tomorrow. But yeah, I don't really like it for the player. I don't like it for the team. I don't like it.
Derek, how do you feel about sitting players out for longer than 2 weeks?
See, I think depending on it really all depends on the trade. Like, we've seen some crazy ass trades going on where it's like 5,000 different things going each and every way. Like, okay, I get it. During that time, I can tell like both teams probably want that person to sit on the sidelines so they don't get hurt either way. But at the same time, like Chychrun once is nuts. I finally just got him back in my fantasy team. Jesus, I just had him in IR for this whole time. I'm like, he's doing great, of course, but at the same time, like, that's an insane amount of time. You could have added on to that person's value, like Matt was saying. Like, you don't know what they're going to do in that time frame. Like, you're sitting there with, like, your GM sitting there just waiting and waiting to see what they get in, and during that entire time, the value of that player is slowly going down nonstop. Like, if they're not showing, not producing, not doing anything out there, why would I want to pay more to see it for someone who's not going to anymore? It's just not the same.
I think a lot of GMs around the league will look at that too, and they'll give the GM a call and just be like, hey, we're really interested in this player, but we're not exactly sure what we're getting here because you keep sitting the guy, so we don't have any sample size to know exactly what this player can do. I mean, I feel like with a player like Chychrun, maybe you have some inkling of what he's going to be for your team, but just to have him sit there and not showcase anything, it wouldn't make me feel good if I'm the other GM on the other end of that trade.
I mean, and I always want to know, especially at this time, right before the playoffs, like, this is when everyone starts producing. Like, I want to see what you're going to do, what you're going to pull out of your hat, because this is when everybody starts pushing their best out, because everyone wants to make playoffs.
Now, for me, regarding the sitting the players for 2 weeks, I'm not a fan of it. I think like a week would probably be the most I would do, and that's. I mean, then I guess that's just pretty much just waiting to finalize the other key pieces in the trade, whatever you're trying to figure out. If players are going one way or picks are going the other, if you're trying to do that, I understand that. But for 2 weeks, like Leslie said, I think that's bad for the team and the player all in one. It just doesn't do anyone any favors. And if it does more so the team trading for him, because now looking back at that trade, I'm going to compare the Chychrun trade with Filip Hronek, and Chychrun only got us one more second-round pick out of the deal, and Chychrun is a way better player. But granted, Filip Hronek was cost-controlled as well as Chychrun was, but he plays a more premium role playing the right-handed D-shot, so I guess that's why you got a little bit more out of it, but also because it was the Vancouver Canucks, you probably got a little more out of it. They don't know exactly what they're doing, so keep calling Steve Yzerman if you're a team that doesn't know what they're doing. We appreciate it a lot. Thanks, St. Louis. Okay.
What's the best thing to do as a GM when you're trying to make a trade? Call the bad GMs early and often. Keep asking them, what King's ransom are you going to give me for Filip Hronek? What ransom are you going to give me for, I don't know, whatever other player you have? All the ones that you think you can fleece.
Do you, I don't remember if I heard this in the press conference with Yzerman after the deadline, but do you guys recall if he had mentioned or if anyone asked if it was Vancouver's GM who made the call or if it was Yzerman who made the call?
I don't think he actually stated who made the call. They just started talking about how he got a good offer about it, and they had to take it. I don't think he said anything about who initiated the trade originally.
I wonder if
from that...
No, sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, from what he was saying, it sounds like you got offered a good trade. It sounds like it might have been the other team scouting out that person.
That's what I'm thinking too, is that their general manager probably made the call, and Yzerman was like, a first and a second, you said? And it's the Islanders?
Filip Hronek? Okay.
Cha-ching.
Look, I wouldn't say no.
No, and that seems to be a majority of the people. Granted, everyone was kind of blindsided by it, like we mentioned before. But this was a candidate that I saw as someone who would be a perfect trade target for any team that was looking for a younger, not middle-aged, but young middle-aged right-handed shooting defenseman that can get you the 40 points per season. And he can get that for you. But my big issue was that, looking at their contracts, Filip Hronek's lined up exactly when Siders did, and I didn't see a reason where Yzerman would feel comfortable to give $14 to $16 million to both players, because I guarantee you Filip Hronek would probably be asking for that kind of contract, even though he is an RFA technically, but I can see a world where the Vancouver Canucks mess up and they just give him a short-term deal and then he walks out on free agency. Getting off topic, though. But that's okay, because I want to start off with a new topic. So, I want to hear from you guys. If the Red Wings pick in the top 10 this year, with their own pick, would you guys rather see the Red Wings use the Islanders' first-round pick to draft a player, or package that in a deal to target a ready-now player? Leslie.
Captain is they have 5 picks in the top 50 of this year's draft. Am I correct about that, Zach?
If everything falls correctly, it would be in the top 50. Yeah. So you could say for safety purposes, top 60, yes.
So top 60, okay. So I think you can package a good amount of those picks, and there's no chance in hell that's going to get you number 1 overall. You'd have to sell off pretty much your entire roster, or at least definitely Mo Sider, Raymond, and some other King's ransom. You're not going to number 1, but could you get up to number 5? Could you get up to number 4? Yeah, I think you really could if you packaged up a few picks, and not only this year, but you could package next year's first round pick too. I think it's definitely doable. I don't really know what a trade like that would look like, but I just feel like in the top, I don't know, what do we want to call it, like top 5 of this draft, it's like there'll be superstar after superstar after superstar after superstar. Like it's going to be one of the most loaded, like top, at least one of the most loaded first round drafts since really McDavid and Eichel. Like this is really what this draft is going to be. That's what everyone is projecting it to be, and that's how I think it'll ultimately turn out. So I think if you're Yzerman, you really should be looking to all your picks and thinking, I don't even have to use any of these. Let me package every single one of them up, wrap it up in a little box, put a neat little bow on it, and go get number 5 or number 4 overall. Because whoever you're getting there will be stud. And they may be ready now, which, let's face it, this team is desperate for superstar talent, desperate for young talent. He can't really wait around too much more for these guys to develop. Let's go get a guy who's ready now and is going to contribute now.
So I guess to answer my question, which one would you rather do? Are you trading some picks for a player, or are you going to draft players with all those picks?
Well, I think I answered your question, but I think I chose a third option. I think I'm going to take all those picks. So technically, yes, I'm going to draft a player with those, but what I'm saying is I want to package them all up and try and work out a deal to get into like the top 5 of the draft, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. I get where Les is coming with that one.
Yeah, so I mean, technically, yes, I want to draft a player, but you don't have to draft him with each individual pick. Package it up and go get, I don't know, Matvey Michkov, Will Smith, who's got a hell of a slap shot. I just wanted to work that joke in there.
No, you're good. Derek,
Yeah,
I'll go before
I was
you.
asking for it.
I'll go before you. Maybe this will help you out in your decision as well, Derek. But to Leslie's point is that looking at the standings right now, the bottom 3 teams are Columbus, Chicago, San Jose. And then it goes Anaheim, Arizona, Vancouver, Montreal, Philadelphia, St. Louis, then us, and the 10th to last spot. So we're picking 10th. Currently, if the league were to end today. If I had to pick one team out of that list of teams that I listed off, the team that I could see trading back with us would be Vancouver. They have some pretty good young talent on their team already. And I think if you packaged up the Islanders, you'd probably have to do like the Islanders pick, depending on where that's at. And then probably all 3 of your seconds, you would probably have to move those to get their pick. Or you use your top 10 pick and then slap in. It's probably going to be more than that, to be honest with you. And I really would like to find a system that could help me out with these trade ideas. But
Chuck Fletcher.
But that, yeah, the Philadelphia Flyers GM, yeah, that was so funny. He said that. I don't, and that doesn't really happen, right? Like top 5, top 10 picks in the NHL on draft day don't ever get traded. Like it's very rare. So as much as I would like to see that happen, I don't think it's realistic. But I would like to see Yzerman utilize our pick, since that will be the lesser of the 2 first-round picks. The Islanders pick will be a higher pick. Yeah, I'm using the Red Wings pick to draft a player, and then I think I'm going to try and put together the Islanders pick for the 2023 draft, and then one of the 2024 drafts, first-round picks that you have, and package that in a deal for a young, talented player, whether that's probably not a right-handed D, probably not a goalie. So you're probably looking at either, I would draft a winger. Some people would probably want a center, but I'm probably looking for the best elite winger that I can. Granted, you'd have to find a team that's willing to get rid of those too. So,
I will say this draft is absolutely loaded at center. Not just center, but forward too. I mean, all the forwards in the first round are just, I'm salivating at the prospect of all of them.
What about you, Derek? What are you looking to do with all this fire ammo that we have over here regarding about draft picks and everything?
Well, I like both of your arguments a lot. I agree a lot with what Leslie said. It'd be a great idea to package a lot of that shit away and just toss it at a high-end pick. Like you said, though, Zach, most of those picks are going to be protected. No one's going to give them up unless you give them something crazy in return. And we're just not in the place right now to be able to give something crazy like that up. So I believe that Yzerman probably going to keep most of the picks, especially the more higher end ones. We might toss out a few of those low end ones, like back end second round ones. But other than that, maybe probably package with somebody, maybe a prospect or something at the best. But I don't think we're going to get touch anywhere near the top 5, top 6, top 7 picks right now. As much as I wish we would, because there's a few people that I would love to have come home with us really fast. That's for sure. There's only one person that we constantly talk about that we already know is going to go first round that I would love to have.
You need to win the lottery. There's no chance anyone's giving it up. I kind of hear what you're saying, Derek, but I kind of disagree. I think we're in a very good spot to trade up and really give up a lot. I mean, we have not only, we have 5 picks this year in the top, whatever it is, 60. We have Boston's next year, their first rounder, potentially a 2025 first rounder. I mean, you can feel a little comfortable giving up a prospect or two in this deal, so long as it's not like Marco Casper or Simon Edvinsson. Like, whatever prospect we decide to draft in, the top 5, they're so high-end talent that they immediately become our best prospect. And it really doesn't, you can pick between whoever you think the top 5 is, whoever you get from that, they immediately become the best prospect on this team. There's no doubt about that. So I think, yeah, it's a little bit of a gamble to give up some of those prospects that could turn into really, really good NHL players, but I think the risk is really worth it to get one of those high-end players in this draft.
I think a lot of things have to fall right for the Red Wings. If the Red Wings somehow got some lottery luck with their own pick,
Nice.
Then I could see a world where Steve Yzerman is then like, okay, maybe now I could package up some of these picks and then trade for a ready now player. Maybe I can insert him on the back end. And it doesn't have to involve all the picks either. You can include some of the prospects that you currently have. Like we've talked about before, the Red Wings have a glutton of left-handed shooting defensemen waiting to come up. They have some in the Swedish Hockey League and a bunch in the American Hockey League and a bunch in the ECHL right now. So eventually some of those are going to have to get moved because not all of them are going to make it, and you have to make those tough choices, I'm pretty sure Edvinsson will be locked in. Johansson's been looking really good, like Yzerman said. Wallander in the Swedish Hockey League has been looking phenomenal as well, so those are 3 big names that you have to look out for, and not all of those players are going to make it, and that really sucks because I like them all. I truly do. So, moving on. What are your guys' expectations for the rest of the season with 19 games left after the one currently happening right now? The Red Wings are now down 2-1, 15:51 left in the third. So if the Red Wings lose, that's a 6-game losing streak. With 19 games left, what are your guys' expectations of the team? How many wins do you think will result in the rest of the 19 games? Derek?
I know looking at our schedule, the back end is not the nicest, but at the same time, we saw what we did for the 6-game win streak we had going on there? We saw what we could do. I mean, I know it's nothing against the best teams in the league out there, and I know we have some tough ones ahead, so I do believe I'd say we at least hit 50% on this one. I'm hoping for 75% of these games, toss it out there, put it into the world, let it be known, Magic Con Show, give me the answer. But at the same time, but we get 50% of these games in, and the season at that, I'll be pretty happy. I know it's not a playoff contender score right there, but I feel like that's a reasonable request for the Red Wings to do at this point, even with everybody getting traded out and whatnot.
Leslie?
I really wish that I didn't have to say this again for the 7th year in a row, but I kind of hope they lose most of these games because at this point, you're on a 6-game losing streak and your schedule is only getting harder. You really anticipate a miraculous push to the playoffs at this point, especially how they've looked this past week. I don't expect that. So really, your best hope is to just lose as much as possible. Hope that some of those other lottery teams string together some wins somehow. I know the bad teams are really bad this year, so I don't really count on that much. But yeah, looking at the schedule, it's tough. I think maybe at most you could win 6 more games there. It's just like a lot of these games on paper that they're supposed to win, they lose, and the ones they're supposed to lose, they win. So we pretty much always get proven wrong on this podcast, and better or worse, that's fine, I suppose. But I don't really expect too much more, and I hope they get a pretty good position at the lottery, because at this point, the 7th year in a row, that's all you can hope for. So, feeling is all too familiar. And we got teased at a playoff push a couple weeks ago, and we thought we were out of that darkness, but we are still here, because it's where we live.
You know what? I'm going to go jump on the Leslie train with this one, because for some reason, anytime we talk shit about the Red Wings of any kind of sorts, they end up proving us wrong. So I'm going with Leslie on this one. Let's just shoot over for 4-game win streak, and that's it. So hopefully it's only 4 losses.
Yeah, for me, honestly, I think it's going to be 5 wins. I'll be shocked if it's anything more than that. The Red Wings only look slightly good defensively. The offense it's just not there anymore. I don't know if it's because the depth isn't there anymore because we traded these players.
I think us being sellers really hurt this team's defense, offense, everything. So I don't.
It hurt the morale. Killed it right now. That's for sure.
Selling never really. I don't know if there's ever been a team that is good after they sold though. So, it's like, what can you really expect after you get rid of all that? I mean, they didn't sell too much, but it's just enough where they look drastically different than they did the whole season.
So I guess that's really what I'm trying to get at is I don't want to judge it based off of how many more wins can they do on expectations of that. My expectations have changed back to where they were at the start of the season. I'm not looking at the win column. I'm looking at the development of the young players. So Joe Veleno, Jonathan Bergeron have been looking great on the line together. Philip Zadina's playing on the top line tonight. I think that he should be there for the rest of the season. Seider looks good. Wallman looks good. Raymond needs to... There's nothing wrong with him. He's just sophomore slump still. He's still trying to figure it out. He will figure it out, I'm sure, and he will be a consistent 60-plus player for the rest of his career. I'm sure that he can be someone's David Perron, and that's honestly what I look forward to him being. Just a little more scoring, a little more dirtier hands, silky mittens.
He still has the silky mitts. It's just not going in for him now.
No, right, yeah. So just being able to finish it. Not saying that he can't, but yeah, that's just what happens when teams have enough tape on you, and they can lock you down a little bit more. So he'll figure it out. I have nothing but pure confidence for the boy. So, and then also you have a lot of players that Yzerman did praise that were in the American Hockey League, like Simon Edvinsson. When's he going to get called up? Who knows if he even gets called up this season? He also said Albert Johansson's doing really good. He also said, oh boy, who's that winger that's on the American Hockey League team, the Grand Rapids Griffins, that I can't think of right now?
Cross Hannes?
Yeah, Cross Hannes. He said that he's been doing well. Granted, he had been injured for a decent amount of the season. Then he gave praise to Marco Kasper as well and the Wallanders. So, we have a lot to look forward to. So that's amazing. One of my last questions before I touch on some other things that Yzerman talked about in his press conference. Those will be key things, but personal thoughts on the Yzerplan, and on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you guys rank yourselves amongst satisfactory with the general manager and his 4 years in charge so far? Leslie.
I mean, it's hard to say now because just 4 years has done enough time to really bear fruit from all of your prospects and just everything you've done in general. I think he's done a very good job at trying to keep the team competitive. I mean, you can see that this year, this team has looked much more competitive than last year with all the additions that he made. And it was something he was saying in his press conference that he was making those moves not necessarily because he thought that he could push into the playoffs this year, but he put a lot of importance on putting a competitive team around guys like Seider, Raymond, Larkin. it's just it does nothing but wonders for their development. You know, the worst thing you can do for a prospect, and this is really why most of our Ken Holland prospects haven't worked out, in my opinion, is you put them on a bad team that's going nowhere. They're not going to learn anything playing with less than average NHL talent. It's just not going to happen. You're better off putting them down in Grand Rapids or their respective junior teams and trying to push for playoffs, because wins breeds confidence, and that is the best thing for your development. I think with guys like Seider and Raymonds, those are the two guys I point to as the top Yzerman picks, and they've really been phenomenal. I mean, Seider was Rookie of the Year, and he haven't had a Rookie of the Year since like the 80s, so that really should tell you everything you need to know. Some of the free agent signings, they haven't been the greatest. We do have a certain someone named Ben Sherrod on the team. Granted, he's looked a little bit better. Honestly, he looks like he's actually kind of finding his game now. Still leaves a lot to be desired defensively, but I've liked him a lot offensively. And Andrew Kopp, it's just, he'll get back next year. He'll bounce back next year. I know he will. But I think overall I give Yzerman an A- for handing out grades today.
On a scale,
I like what I've seen so far, and I'm excited to see more.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what's an A-?
8.5.
8.5. All right.
I think that's actually not at all how letter grades work. Now that I think about it,
That's your
that
letter grades.
You're not a teacher. It's okay. We don't need
It's
to
been
worry
a long
about
time since I've been in school, right? 2019 was a while ago.
All right, Derek. Personal thoughts on the Yzerplan so far, and on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you rank yourself among satisfactory with the general manager in his 4 years so far?
I'll toss him out a solid 9. So I'd say just a straight A. No A- in there, but an A. A little above what Leslie, because it's exactly what we thought was going to happen. We're in rebuild mode. He's doing exactly what he did with Tampa Bay. He created an amazing team down there in 8 years. We're at our halfway point right now. We're over 50% with our wins right now. We've only gone up since he's come in. And I'm just going to throw it in there. I'm going to trust Yzerman. He was my all-time favorite player for my entire life growing up. Still one of my favorite people to listen talk about the game of hockey. I believe he knows what he's doing right now, so I'm gonna stick with him. I'm gonna jump on the Z-Man's train and just hope for the best of that, because it's gonna hurt the rest of this season. But I do believe some of our players, like Matt was saying, like Coop, Sherrod, hopefully, dear God, we're seeing something different with that. I don't know, but just end this year, be a little off for everybody, but after we start getting some of these other players in, start getting some new talent, some prospects bringing up, I believe Yzerman knows what he's doing. He's going to create a good team for us in the future, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm right around where you guys are. I think I'm between the 8.5 to the 9. I really like everything that Yzerman has done so far. He's been a man of his words. I mean, he has done everything that he said he was going to do. He said that he was going to build through the draft. He's been doing that. Granted, some of that has come at the expense of trading some of your younger players, but unfortunately, that's just the name of the business. When you have these young, good players that just aren't part of your timeline, you have to move on and start building on when your timeline is going to happen. And in terms of the prospects that he has drafted, nothing but success for a majority of them. There have been some questionable ones that have been puzzling. For sure. Not anyone that I'm going to name off the top of my head personally. But with the free agent signings, like you guys said, not all of them have been great, but we've had some really good ones too. So Yzerman mentioned that he wanted to put together a competitive team, not in the sense of cup competitor, but just all round competitive and making sure that the locker room keeps that type of atmosphere and you are securing good players on and off the ice to instill that same kind of emotion, chemistry, and focus to your young players that you are bringing up. So, yeah, I have full faith and trust in the Yzerplan. I just think it's funny that we keep saying it now after 4 years since we got him to come into the organization, but I see nothing but great things coming our way. Honestly, I think I've said this multiple times, whether if it was on or off the podcast, that I think 2023 is going to be the biggest year for the Red Wings in terms of taking that huge next step forward. The only criticism that I do have about Yzerman so far is that there have been times where he hasn't utilized his trade chips in the best ways possible. And then also he hasn't really gone out there to get elite talent. Um, Granted, I get that. Why would you do that when these teams have been really, really bad? A la the 2019, 2020, 21, 22 season teams, um, or the 2020, 21 season teams. But still, I look at teams much like the New York Rangers, where they got Panarin, and then they ended up getting um, who did I say? I said Panarin, and then who's the other guy that's on the New York Rangers? Zibanejad. No, Zibanejad. So they had those two players, and then they got those two players before that they even won the first overall and the second overall pick in their respective drafts for Lafreniere and Kappa. So that is one thing that I will nag on Yzerman on, is that he did not. I'm not going to say that he never attempted to go out and get those, because it is tough to find those types of players via free agency. Although I do think Zibanejad was traded to the Rangers, but I digress. Yeah, so I would say 8.5 to a 9 for sure for me. Like I said, I can't say it enough that I'm all in the long run for the Yzerplan, and I like what I've seen so far and what is going to happen with the team. So he's setting us up for nothing but success in the future, and so I'm thankful for that, and I love the man, and I love my Red Wings. So
he's Daddy Z.
Daddy Z. So before we end it here, I just want to go over some stuff from the press conference. Helen St. James was the only one to ask Yzerman about Vrana. Yzerman says he wishes nothing but the best of luck to Vrana, and that it was just simply time for both parties to move on. That's pretty much all he said. Yzerman also said that it wasn't the 2 games versus the Senators that ended up sealing the deal for the trade deadline for him, but it did make an impact on it. His decision pretty much was made when they were on the West Coast trip, but the 5-game heater then did technically put a hold on it, but it really didn't. He stuck course. I think whether if he would have won one or both of the Senators games, I think he was ultimately going to sell. That's my opinion, at least. That's not what he said. Like we talked about, he likes what he sees from fellow prospects in the American Hockey League: Edvinsson, Johansson, Cross Hannes, and he likes Marco Kasper, and he likes Wallander. Steve also said that about Kosa, we want him to play a lot where he is challenged, not too hard and not too easy. So the ECHL was the best place for him, and he's been looking really good as of late. So I'm expecting him to make the Grand Rapids Griffins next season, and hopefully in 2 years we could see him in the Red Wings organization starting night lineup, hopefully. That would be great, but goalies take longer to develop than others.
Kosa's making me eat my words right now. That dude is playing lights out.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it.
He is. And then he was then also asked about Carter Mazur on whether or not we could see him in the American Hockey League. It's Carter's decision whether he wants to stick with Denver to finish out the rest of the year. And then also it's up to him and Denver to decide if it's better for him to stay there, because Yzerman does appreciate players who want to stick around for their academic purposes. Get your education, be smartical, be great, be wise, So, but yeah, that's a player that I ultimately do seeing being with the Grand Rapids Griffins. Maybe potentially even with the Red Wings right away. I don't know. Who knows? I'm sure he'll have a great camp.
In my mind, he's doing himself a disservice. I understand with the academic things and everything that he would like to graduate college. I think that's a pretty important thing just in your life in general. But I've seen some highlights of him playing at Denver. He does not need to be there anymore. I mean, it's like AHLer playing junior, like it's very clear when you watch this guy that he's too good for that league, and he's not going to learn anything else. He's not going to develop any further in that league. I'd love to see him be Grand Rapids Griffin and continue what he's doing. And if he can put together a season like he's done at Denver in his first season in Grand Rapids, you you could absolutely see him here in 2 years or 3 years and be a bona fide goal scorer in the NHL. I think out of most of our prospects, him and Casper are like the guys that I've like just put all my faith in that they can be not superstars but stars in the NHL.
If you guys cannot tell, Leslie very much does love himself some Carter Mazer. He is infatuated with that.
A lot more than most.
I love prospects that can score goals because that's what the Red Wings can't do. Score goals.
That is very true. That is very true. To continue on with it, though, Yzerman did say that he does see Buffalo and Ottawa ahead of us in terms of the rebuild process, which doesn't mean much considering neither of them have done much in the last 10 years. So, yeah, there's that. Yzerman hopes that one or two players push for a job in the NHL next season. I don't know if you want to throw in Soderblom in there if you want, considering that he did play a decent amount of games this season, but him...
I think you probably should, because you'd want him to get like a full-time role in the big club.
Yeah, I think he's probably one of them. It's going to be tough for a left-handed defenseman, and I don't see Cross-Hannes making that jump. If I had to make a bold prediction, I do think that it would probably be either Wallander to be the left-handed defenseman to make it out, but that's a really bold prediction. But my next one, that's a little more realistic. I think that I could firmly say that there is a really good opportunity that Marco Kasper makes the opening night roster. That kid can, he does a lot more, not dirty play, but like he's definitely got the similar style to Tyler Bertuzzi does. Like I see the highlights that Ice Hockey Gives posts on Twitter. He or she, I'm not sure how they want to consider themselves, but they put out great content for the overseas players, so I love watching those. And then
I have a little bit of a hot take, if I'm allowed to do one. I think I'm required to do a hot take at least once every episode.
Okay, spit it out.
I think Marco Kasper will be on this team next year, and I think he will be a Calder finalist.
Okay.
Now, that is not me putting any of that kind of pressure on him, but just watching him play in Rogla, which, by the way, that is a men's league. I believe he's only 19 now, so he's playing against grown men. Yeah, I mean, he's ready now. If the opportunity presented itself, I think he could come over now and be on the team. But that's my bold prediction. He will be a Calder finalist next year. He will play a full season. Boom. Mic drop.
All right.
I'll take it. That's a nice little prediction.
I just hope that he makes the team opening night roster. That was my bold choice. So.
All right.
That's a good one, Leslie. So we'll hold you to that one. Maybe I'll make a short clip out of this, and then we'll follow up with it from next year when the season starts. Mm-hmm. And then to leave it off on Derek Lalonde's progression, Steve Yzerman says it's going really well. The structure is solid, and he's created a good atmosphere amongst the players. And they enjoy the coaching they're receiving, and Steve Yzerman is still very much in the honeymoon phase with the coach. So that's great to hear. He loves what he's seeing. The team definitely is more competitive this year than it has been in recent years, and that doesn't really say much when you think about it, but in terms of defensive responsibilities, you definitely see it there. Offensive, it's there and it's not. It depends on the night. Yeah, those are all great things to hear from Steve Yzerman. If you guys didn't get to watch the press conference, I definitely recommend you guys go and watch that. There's a lot of great information that Steve Yzerman lets out. That guy is very much a closed book in terms of what he wants people to know and what he wants to put out there in terms of speculation. He doesn't want things to be going one way when he interprets them to be one way. So, and I probably just said that.
It's also great just to watch him try to not rip his fingernails out with every single question that he barely answer.
Yeah, that man definitely he's getting ready for his next plot. So with that, that's all we have for you guys tonight. We'd like to thank you guys again for joining us on this episode of Hockeytown University. Like we like to say here, we appreciate you guys for joining us. Please don't forget to subscribe, If you guys want to know the next time we post an episode, hit the notification bell. Make sure you smash the like button when you are watching this. We definitely appreciate it. It does go a long way for us. And, leave a comment. Let us know what you guys think about the Yzerplan thus far. Wow, it's definitely late night, guys. Can't you tell? So, let us know what you think, regardless if that's now, going into the future. Let us know what you think about Steve Yzerman and his plan. That's all we got for you guys. We appreciate it. Until next time.
Thanks, everybody. If you have any opinions, message Zach, let him know it, then tell him why you think he's wrong.